Hello, I'm Jane Newsome. I'm a friend of St Anne's and I volunteer full-time with the charity Hands at Work in Africa. Well, I still use a paper diary. I'm afraid electronic ones just don't do it for me. I like to be able to look at the pages, I like to move the ribbon along, and I like to flick back to see what I've been doing last week and last year. And so, as we're coming up to the 1-year anniversary of the national lockdown, I thought I'd have a look at my 2020 diary. I guess that the 23rd of March 2020 is a date that's seared into all of our minds. The sight of a stern-looking Boris Johnson telling us all that we had to stay in and only go out for exercise and for essential shopping. What a shock all of that was. And looking at my diary, the weeks after the 23rd of March are all full of scrubbings out, things crossed out, meetings with friends, meals, going out to cafes, all scrubbed out. And then there are a few blank pages. And then a new word appears in my diary. Zoom, Zoom coffee, Zoom meetings, Zoom cheese and wine even. How our lives have changed in the course of a year. And now, as the first signs of spring are starting to appear, as the days are lengthening and we're looking forward to Easter, and there's a roadmap to the easing of lockdown, we can all start to look forward to the time when we can visit family and friends again, go out for a coffee or a beer and have our hair cut. And the temptation is just to slam the door firmly shut on last year and get on with our lives. But looking at my diary reminded me that maybe there is merit in taking time to remember and made me think of how the experience of 2020 has changed me and what I've learnt. In the Old Testament of the Bible, we read the story of Moses leading the children of Israel out of slavery in Egypt and to freedom in the Promised Land. It's a story that many of us will have heard of, perhaps in school. The Israelites were being cruelly treated as slaves by the Egyptians. God calls Moses to free them from slavery. They manage to escape. And then they spend 40 years wandering in the wilderness until finally they reach the Promised Land, a land where we are told it is flowing with milk and honey. Finally, they can leave all those years of hardship behind. Finally, they are where they have longed to be. But Moses says, remember. Remember the long way that the Lord your God has led you these 40 days in the wilderness, it says. Now, I guess that many of them would have preferred to forget all about that. But Moses says, remember. Remember what God has done for you, that despite everything, God kept you safe. Remember those who didn't make it to the Promised Land. Remember the tough times when you messed up and turned away from God. Remember what you learnt. As we start thinking about all the things we'll soon be able to do once lockdown is over, maybe now is a good time also to pause and remember. Remember what we've been through together, the people we met along the way, those who helped us get through all of this, the telephone calls, the Zoom meetings, the emails, neighbours, acquaintances who became friends, even if it was virtually. Remember the new skills we've learnt. Remember how our priorities changed. Remember too those we have lost. And maybe as we remember, notice how God's steadfast love has brought us all through this, the tough times and the surprising times. Before we launch headlong into our old activities, maybe this is a good time to take stock, to ask ourselves how this has changed us, what it is that we've learnt. But there's also a deeper type of remembering that Moses talks about to the children of Israel, one that comes in the form of a demand, of a command. We read in Leviticus, "You shall love the alien as yourself, For you were aliens in the land of Egypt. A command to love, to care for the immigrants, the strangers in their land, because they know what it was like to be immigrants when they were in Egypt. Remember what it was like and look out for people who were experiencing what you experienced. As I look back at my 2020 diary, I remember the feelings of uncertainty. All the things I took for granted, all the plans I'd made, were taken away overnight. When was I going to be able to see my children and grandchildren again? What would happen if I or somebody I loved got COVID, for which at that point there was no cure? Living with uncertainty was really tough, not being able to make plans. But for many people throughout the world, when our lockdown ends, their uncertainty continues. In the communities in Africa where we work in Hands at Work in Africa, the poorest communities in southern Africa, people literally don't know from one day to the next where they're going to get their food from, what they're going to eat. They live with the daily danger of contracting malaria. In the Democratic Republic of Congo and in Zambia this year, there is a terrible outbreak of malaria, so much so that clinics have run out of the medication to treat it, and people will die. This is the uncertainty that comes with poverty. Will I be able to feed my children tomorrow? Will I be able to get to the clinic if my children are sick? Will I live long enough to bring up my children? So maybe as we remember 2020, and as we look forward again to being able to make plans and keep them, let's not forget that this pandemic has given us a privileged glimpse into the lives of those whose existence will continue to be precarious, lived from day to day, if not hour to hour. So my prayer as we come out of this lockdown and as we look forward to welcoming back our old freedoms, to the time when we can make plans and keep them, is that we will also be able to and have the courage to make a bit of space to remember all we've experienced this last year, and that it will make us more generous, more sensitive, more compassionate to those who don't have the option of making plans.